Smoke rises over Beirut after the latest Israeli airstrikes target the Lebanese capital. The Israeli Prime Minister warned Lebanon could face destruction like Gaza as fighting between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah intensifies. Canada continues to urge citizens to leave Lebanon as soon as possible, but many are reluctant to evacuate, leaving hundreds of empty seats on Ottawa-chartered flights out of Lebanon. And officials say they can't force people to leave.
What we're seeing is that Canadians at this point are scared to leave. They're scared to leave their homes. They're scared to leave their extended families who may not be able to travel. And so they're making decisions that best suit them. We can't force anyone to leave.
Stephani Moukhaiber is a Lebanese Canadian choosing to stay in Lebanon despite the urgings from the Canadian government to leave. Stephani Moukhaiber, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you've decided to stay. Lebanon is your home. Why are you safe? What is the situation like where you are right now?
So where I live is about 30 minutes to 25 minutes away from the southern suburbs of Beirut. So I am far enough, but I'm also close enough to hear and possibly see some of the airstrikes from the roof. But we're safe. I mean, everyone in this area is safe. This is an area that has seen a lot of evacuations as well and displaced citizens. So far, so good. Mentally, we're hanging on there, but physically, we're okay.
You say evacuations and displaced citizens. Do you mean to your community or out of your community? Like, are people coming there to escape the fighting?
Yeah, to the community, because we live in the mountains and in areas where they're not considered targeted areas, if you want to say that. These are also the areas that were safe, relatively safe in the 2006 war. So since then, this has been pretty much like the safe space for people that are looking for safety or to leave Beirut or the south of Lebanon.
Well, thankfully you're safe, and it's safe for now, but as we know, the situation can change and change quickly and change urgently. So you're a Lebanese Canadian, dual citizenship, as I understand it. Why have you decided to stay despite the Canadian government urging people with Canadian passports to leave and offering them passage out?
So I think for me, it became a very personal decision to make, and it wasn't necessarily, an easy one at this point, just because I moved here recently, and I moved here because of some of the troubles that I had living in Canada with the economic situation and recession and layoffs and whatnot. Luckily, when I got personally laid off last year or last year, I was already running my own company and my own business. So I had the privilege to be able to move and come here and, run it in Lebanon, particularly because it is a media company and I do speak about the Levant and its stories and its diaspora. So it just made sense to me to move, and now it makes sense to me to stay. Not only because it's logistically a nightmare for me to pack up my things, my pets, and just go back to Canada to no job and no home and no nothing, but also because I feel like I have the duty as someone who runs a media platform to give this channel to people living in the diaspora and as well people in the West to convey our side of the story and the narrative that we hold, just because right now it's not being done fairly and it's not being approached in a correct manner, and it's full of bias so far.
Sorry, which part of the story is that for Lebanese Canadians being offered evacuation, or the people of Lebanon in this conflict? Which element do you feel is not being covered appropriately? If you could be more specific there.
It's not about the evacuation. I'm speaking about the whole genocide that's happening right now and has been ongoing for the last year.
Okay, all right, I gotcha. Your decision to not leave, though, just to come back to that for 1 second. Thankfully, you are safe, and when you outline, your business and your life, you can see all the complications of just packing up and going, even though the situation has deteriorated, and this probably explains why so many of the seats are leaving unfilled on the Canadian planes. Do you have an evacuation plan? Do you have a backup plan if it gets worse? Because the southern suburbs of Beirut were fine until they weren't, right? And just what's the plan if it does get too difficult?
I have thought about it. It's definitely something that you need to keep in mind, all the time, because you never know how things escalate. And as I mentioned in my other interviews, that right now we're not even living day by day, but we're living hour by hour. So yes, I do have some thoughts about what I could possibly do. But at this point, it's also logistically hard to leave with my animals, and I'm someone who cannot leave without my pets and just like leave them stranded here or in shelters. That's not something that I would do. A funny joke that my friends and I were talking about the other day was we could, rent one of these like luxury boats or like these boats rides that are being given either to Cyprus or Turkey, and potentially just stay there for a little bit while we wait for things to calm down. But my plan at this moment in time is pretty kind of confirmed. Like I'm staying here for now. And whether or not I would consider potentially going back to Montreal or Canada as in general is definitely a plan C, not even a plan B at this moment in time.
Right, you'd hunker down somewhere close by so you could get home more easily, and the frustrations you've outlined with your experiences in Canada because of the economic challenges. But you've got family here in Canada. What are they saying about your decision to stay there as things escalate? They must be worried.
Yes, actually, my mom was here on vacation just last week. And as soon as, things started to escalate, actually, I think it was the day prior to my first CBC interview, I got her on a plane the next morning and she was out of here. That was kind of like my priority. My priority was their safety. Now, as for their concern and worry, of course, their concern and worry, they've been through this, they kind of know the scenario, and this time around, it doesn't seem like it's kind of constrained in the same way that it was in 2006. So they are really fearful for my life and everything, but they do understand my decision and they do respect it as well. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see where this goes.
I wonder, you're Lebanese Canadian. I don't know if you know a lot of other Lebanese Canadians, people with the Canadian citizenship who would be eligible to leave and be evacuated by Canada. The uptake has not been large through a number of reasons, either an inability to get there or a lack of desire to get there. What are people in the same situation as you saying to you about their decision to stay or leave? What is the common thread there?
There are different reasons actually that people are coming to me with. However, I want to point out that since my last interview, I did have a couple of friends that have decided to leave Lebanon since then. However, they didn't make it to Canada either, but they did leave just for their safety and concern. However, the rest of the friends that I have that are staying here and have decided to stay here have either decisions that are similar to mine, which are they either run their own freelancers and they run their own businesses here in the region, or potentially, the worry of going back to Canada and then kind of trying to figure out what's next for them, given that, rent is high, finding a decent job these days is really scarce, and, it takes people 6 to 7 months of applications to potentially get a few interviews, and that's, considering people that come from really good backgrounds with pretty good organizations prior, and in Canada especially. So there is a huge risk there as well to go back and be on welfare potentially or unemployment insurance, or this is not the way that we want to lead our lives. We are very educated people, the highest, we have one of the highest literacy rates, including Palestine, by the way, in the whole world. And we cannot just leave ourselves, let ourselves leave home and be stranded without a completely plan B and ability to say that we are going to support ourselves. And at the end of the day, I think there's one very prominent thing that I think you are forgetting as well, is that this is also home. Canada is partially home for us, who, especially for someone like me who lived there for 14 years, but I also lived equally the same time here, and I was raised here, and I have family here and roots here. So it's not as easy to just say, okay, I'm just gonna pick up and leave. This is our home, this is our land. We're people that really cherish our land. We cultivate it every day. It's just a different scenario, and I guess it's running through everyone's minds right now, where they're like, if we leave, we might not be able to come. And then what if we leave and it's only for, a month or two? It's not really that worth it at this point to go through all this logistical nightmare. So I guess each person has their own decision, and they have their own personal reasons. But then again, we're still at at a moment in time that we've kind of already lived through in 2006. So we unfortunately, you know, are, no, I don't want to say desensitized to it because it's still pretty terrifying, but you know, we've lived through it. So we're just hanging on there for now.
Look, I understand the power of home, and I get your decision. Thank you for explaining it to us. And Stephani Moukhaiber, I hope you stay safe. I hope your animals stay safe. And thanks for joining me here today.